and we have started discussion on the 6th chapter. We have covered first 2 sections. Mainly this section is focused on how to make the mind our friend. If one is able to make the mind our friend, then what is the merit? What is the greatest merit that one experiences while one is able to make the mind friend? Anyone remembers? May I ask those who are present here, what is the merit of making the mind our friend? What benefit or what advantage do we derive? Please tune in your videos. Don't remain video off. Manoram Jagannath Prabhu, Pradeep. What is the advantage of making the mind friend? We've been discussing this chapter for almost more than 2 months. Who wants to begin? Yes, Manoram Prabhu.
Kṛṣṇa Prabhuji, a person who has controlled the mind, so he will remain always satisfied, and
Yes.
he will not
very good. Very important. Most important aspect of our existence is that we have to become satisfied. Unless and until one is satisfied, one can never experience peace. And unless and until one experiences peace, one can never experience happiness. So the entire world wants to be happy, wants to be in a state of joy, in a state of bliss. But it is just the opposite that what they are experiencing. Why? Because the mind is ever dissatisfied. It is agitated. Rather, it is always burning. So when the mind is dissatisfied, it is agitated, it is disturbed, there is no possibility of satisfaction, peace, or happiness. So what was the verse Kṛṣṇa spoke? The last 3 verses that we discussed. Yata-cittātmā praṣāntasya. Prashant. Shant, not only Shant, is samyak rupena Shant. So all the disturbances and the agitations of the minds are completely settled. It has come to the position of being tranquil. So it is fully satiated. It's not just satisfied, it is fully satiated. Very good. This is yata-cittātmā praṣāntasya. So one who has conquered the mind, he has already achieved tranquility or peace. And Kṛṣṇa will speak. Kṛṣṇa says, ashantasya kutho sukham. One who is not peaceful, there is no possibility for him to experience any happiness. Very good. So we should see, we should learn from this very important section that in our life, we should not be very much remain dissatisfied. We should not have very high expectations, especially from others. Because that will create the mind in always in an agitative and disturbed mood and not allow us to experience any happiness or joy. Very important. So one of the austerity of the mind, when we come to the 17th chapter, what is the austerity of the mind? Kṛṣṇa recommends is to be satisfied. Very good. Okay. Some other contributions. What is the other merit of one who has controlled the mind, or one who has conquered the mind, or one who has made his mind his friend? What is the merit or advantage? Normally I speak and you just hear, but I am, asking you also to participate. So far, what we have discussed, nothing new. Pradeep, you should speak, you should be volunteering. Why I have to ask so many times?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. One who control the mind, he can see the happiness and distress same at the same level.
He is neutral. He is neutral. He is neutral to both happiness and distress. Why? Because the disturbance comes through the mind. So once the mind is controlled, it cannot be disturbed. What is the natural reflex or the response that we see? That if there is any favorable situation, we are elated, we are overjoyed. And if there is any unfavorable situation, we are put into distress or depression. So what was the verse? It says, Shit Ushna Sukha Dukkheshu Tatha-mana Apamānaṁ. One who has controlled the mind, he is neutral to all dualities, whether it is Shit or Ushna, heat and cold, that is at the physical level, that is at the bodily level, or it is Sukha or Dukkha, which is at the mental level, and honor and dishonor, which is at the level of false ego. Okay? Yes. What are the other advantages? Don't you feel? What is the disadvantage? Okay, if you don't feel the advantage, what is the disadvantage that you experience right now? Anyone who can say his mind is fully controlled, he is fully peaceful? So what are the disadvantages? Or what is the suffering that we are having because of the uncontrolled mind? The mind has remained our worst enemy. Again, I have to ask specifically. Yes, Ravindra Bro.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. With our agitated mind, we are always suffering about this mahana, apman, and ahankar, mithya ahankar. And
even take it further, that we have covered. What is the... Yeah, okay.
Unable to concentrate in the supreme spiritual science of Supreme Lord, and unable to receive the real knowledge.
Unable to
receive the real knowledge, Prabhuji.
The distracted mind, the uncontrolled mind, does not allow us to focus or receive knowledge. Okay, what else? We discussed 3 verses. Just quote from those verses or whatever you got inspired, or what is a new discovery or learning that you had. You can also speak, Sonika. So it is jnana vijnana triptātmā. So one will receive not only knowledge, but also one will have realization. Why this jnana does not convert into vijnana? Because the mind remains agitated, disturbed. It remains unsatisfied, dissatisfied. So it is always hankering for material possessions, material desires, material sense gratification. So neither the jnana is proper, and it does not translate or transform into vijnana. Taking a point further, Ravindra Bro. So one is not able to come to the stage of jnana vijnana. He remains a vimudha. Someone wants to say something? So Kṛṣṇa is speaking, and the most striking thing that really struck me was the 9th verse. That if one is able to control the mind, what is the level of control, the controlled mind, to what extent it can give one relief from the suffering, is really there in the 9th verse, the nectar, where one is able to equally see even one's friend, one's well-wisher, and even one enemies and envious people as same. That means a person comes to a level where he does not see anyone, or he does not oppose anyone, or he never sees anyone opposed to him. What will be the quality of life when one can come to this platform? In our experience, every time what we do, we are able to discriminate. We always do discrimination. That who is favorable as who is unfavorable, who is a friend and who is an enemy. But if the mind is controlled by the yoga practice which is given by Kṛṣṇa, so Kṛṣṇa is here empowering. Kṛṣṇa is educating, enlivening us. That if one is able to control his mind by the yoga process which Kṛṣṇa is teaching, to what extent of joy and happiness he can experience in this life. This is this section. So we will do the prayers and then we will continue with the 10th verse onwards. We discussed till 9th verse as last time. So we will try to take 10, 11 and 12, at least 3 verses this time. So how this practice can begin, or where it begins, how to begin this practice of yoga where one can control the mind. Om Ajnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam yena bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagan Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. So the 10th verse, as you can see in the screen, is Yogī yuñjīta satatam ātmānaṁ rahasi sthitaḥ ekākī yata-cittātmā nirāśīr aparigrahaḥ. So Kṛṣṇa continues to speak on the process of concentration of the mind on the Supreme Lord. So yogi is one who has controlled the mind. Many times we have discussed that every yoga practice entails controlling of the senses and the mind. So yogi is a practitioner who has controlled the mind. And one who has controlled the mind, he can go beyond the modes. He is a transcendentalist. And is always yuñjīta. Yuñjit means one who is always connected. So how he is connected? Because he is always concentrating his mind on Kṛṣṇa. In our case, where our mind is concentrated? Our mind is concentrated either on persons or positions that we require. But here, the practitioner is so elevated or is so advanced that his mind is always concentrated on Kṛṣṇa. He is always in yoga. Yogi is always yuñja. Yuñja means he is always connected. And satatam, again Kṛṣṇa is using the word satatam, means constantly. That means his mind does not deviate or divert even for a moment. In our case, we struggle that even for a moment, the mind may concentrate on Kṛṣṇa. But one who has controlled the mind, such a yogi, his mind does not distract or deviate even for a moment. His ātmānaṁ rahasi sthitaḥ. Sthita means situated, there is fixed. And ātmānaṁ here means mainly on the mind. Because how he is remaining fixed? Because his mind is fixed in performing activities for Kṛṣṇa's pleasure. And such a person is ekākī. Even if we are alone, what do we experience? Do we really experience we are alone? We are always having so much of imposition of the association of our mind. The mind is constantly imposing so many thoughts, ideas, desires, and aspirations. Constantly. It is so constantly that it never leaves us alone, even for a minute or a moment. But here, ekākī has two meanings. One is that he is secluded. That means he is away from others. But the other deeper meaning the acharyas explain is where he has no other thought. So see, when the mind is controlled, one's thinking is also controlled. Thought process is controlled. It is deeper. How one's thought process can be controlled? When the mind is concentrated or fixed in Kṛṣṇa. Then there is no such flow of desires for sense gratification. So he is ekākī. Ekākī means he is alone. Alone means he is out of the purview of the demands and desires of the mind. The mind is always demanding. That is what the ad industry has picked up. That slogan, that famous slogan, ye dil mange more or ye man mange more. Where it is coming? It is coming from the psyche. And this psychology is there. So the person is never alone because the mind is always imposing its ideas, its desires, its demands to be fulfilled. So such a practitioner is ekākī. And yata-cittātmā. Prabhupada says yata-cittātmā means who is always careful in mind. And what is the symptom that a person is ekākī? He is nirāśīr. Nirāśīr, Asha. Ashi, everyone is having so much of aspirations or asha, what we get, hope or desires. Cinema people write songs on this. Dil hai chota sa, choti si asha, āsmānaṁ mein udane ki asha. And so what is this? Always there is an asha. Asha means aspirations or hopes or desires or demands. But what Bhagavad Gita says is totally different. In the divine and demoniac section, Kṛṣṇa will explain that those who are demoniac, how to know that the people is the demoniac? Because his heart is always saturated with unlimited desires to enjoy. And that desire becomes the cause of his entanglement. Very beautiful verse. Asha pasha shater baddher kam krodha parayan. Manoram Prabhu, you will show the verse. I'll tell you the verse number. It is 16.11 and 12. 16.11 and 12. So this asha is what? Is hope, and hope against hope. In this material world, everyone is having hope against hope. He is in a hopeless condition. But still, he continues to have so much. Yeah, you see the 12th verse? It says, Asha Pash. Pash, you understand? Pash is the entanglement. Come down to the meaning, word meaning. And it is Shater Baddha. Here see, Asha Pash is entanglement in the network of hope. And what happens is Shater Baddha. And how many Asha Pash is? Shater. Shater means Shatak. Hundreds of such desires. And as many desires, as many times he gets entangled. He is entangled. But here, okay, you may read it. I have given you the reference. You just see the difference, the contrast. So Kṛṣṇa is saying he is not Asha Pash. Such a practitioner is nirāśīr. That means he has no material aspirations. He has no material desires. How he is free from material desires? Because the mind is controlled. Is yogī, yuñjīta, satatam. Because he is always connected with Kṛṣṇa. So as we remain disconnected to Kṛṣṇa, there will always be this flow of desires. Where did we hear this? In the 2nd chapter, Kṛṣṇa spoke about it. Anyone remembers the verse? Very beautiful verse. That is also talking about the person who is able to control the mind and senses. Anyone remembers the verse? Kṛṣṇa spoke about one who is able to go beyond the flow of the desires and the demands of the mind. No one remembers. Now we are in the 6th chapter. You should be knowing the 2nd chapter. Make an effort. Kṛṣṇa says, Prajāhyati yada kāmān sarvān pārthā manogata. Prajāhati means that one who is given up all the varieties of desire for sense gratification, where it arises, which is where the desires are situated in the mind. Mind is the storehouse of all unfulfilled desires. So such a practitioner, a yuñjīta yogi, is always nirāśīr. He has no material aspiration. He has no material desires. He is not attracted by anything else than the Supreme Lord. And he is also aparigrahaḥ. So these are the two aspects of one who has controlled the mind. Parigraha, you understand? Sangraha, you understand? What is sangraha? Anyone? What is sangraha? Sangra means to collect or to possess. And aparigrahaḥ means one who is free from the feeling and desire of possessiveness. That means he is detached, he is renounced. So a practitioner who has controlled the mind, what are his symptoms and what stage he has achieved? That he is the transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. That is yogī, yuñjīta, satatam. And he should always remain alone in a secluded place. That means he is not haunted by his mind, which is filled with desire, nor is he haunted by those people who have desires for sense gratification. So he is out of all material association. So he is always in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. That is yata-cittātmā. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. So this is the great advantage, a great merit of one who has controlled the mind. That means he is elevated, he is advanced to such a stage where nothing can disturb. Anything may happen, but he will remain fixed. Prabhupada says in the purport that Kṛṣṇa is realized in 3 different degrees as Brahman, Paramatma, and Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we have discussed this many, many times. So these are 3 levels. Like there are different levels of education. We have discussed so many times. There is primary education, there is secondary education, and then there is senior education. All 3 are education, but they are not the same. So similarly, the Supreme Lord or the Absolute Truth is realized in different degrees. Like you can have a currency note. You can have a currency note which is of 10 rupees, of 100 rupees, and 500 rupees. But although they are currency note, but the value that they have is different. So similarly, the Supreme Absolute Truth of Kṛṣṇa is realized in different degrees as Brahman, Paramatma, and Supreme Personality of Godhead or Bhagavan. Kṛṣṇa consciousness means concisely to be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So, how this is possible? To be constantly always engaged is when one is at this level. When he is ekākī yata-citta. But those who were attached to the impersonal Brahman or localized super soul are also partially Kṛṣṇa conscious. So Prabhupada is talking about those who have not come to this most advanced stage of loving devotional service. Even though they are attached to the impersonal aspect or the localized super soul, they are partially Kṛṣṇa conscious. Because the impersonal Brahman is the spiritual ray of Kṛṣṇa and the super soul is the all-pervading partial expansion of Kṛṣṇa. One example is given to explain. Like we see, Kṛṣṇa is compared to the sun. And what the sun does? The sun expands. And how does the sun expands everywhere? The sun expands through his terrible rays. His rays are very powerful. This is sunshine, the sun rays. Sun rays create so much of light, and also the sun creates the heat. But the sun is not the sun ray or the heat. It is aloof from both. So similarly, the sun ray is compared to the impersonal aspect or the Brahma Jyoti of the Lord. The sun ray is not the sun. But the sun ray is a part of the sun. So similarly here, this parallel is drawn by Srila Prabhupada, where he is mentioning that Brahman is the spiritual ray of Kṛṣṇa. Is the spiritual ray of Kṛṣṇa, and super soul is the localized diffusion in the part of Paramatma who is seated in everyone's heart, in every atom. Is a partial expansion of Kṛṣṇa. Thus, the impersonalists and the meditators are also indirectly Kṛṣṇa conscious. A directly Kṛṣṇa conscious person is the topmost transcendentalist, because such a devotee knows what is meant by Brahman and Paramatma. Like someone who is doing senior education, one who is doing senior education, that one who is doing graduation, of course he knows about primary and secondary school. He does not have to be educated. He has already crossed that. He has already cleared that. His knowledge of the absolute truth is perfect. Whereas the impersonalist and the meditative yogi are imperfectly Kṛṣṇa conscious. So similarly, one who has done primary school, his knowledge is limited only to primary education. He cannot go beyond that. He cannot be equal to graduate. Nevertheless, all of these are instructed herewith to be constantly engaged in their particular pursuits, so that they may come to the highest perfection sooner or later. So like a primary education student, if he continues to study, what will be the result? By completing his primary education, he will come into secondary. And after completing his secondary, he will come into graduation. This is what Srila Prabhupada is explaining. That it is instructed herewith to be constantly engaged in that particular pursuit, so that they may come to the highest perfection sooner or later. The first business of the transcendentalist is to keep the mind always on Kṛṣṇa. How much possibility is there? Prabhupada is saying that this is the first business. The first and the foremost thing is to keep the mind always focused on Kṛṣṇa or concentrated on Kṛṣṇa. One should always think of Kṛṣṇa and not forget him even for a moment. Concentration of the mind on the Supreme is called samadhi or trance. This is the highest perfection. In this yoga ladder, what are the stages? What are the stages of this yoga ladder, of the Dhyana yoga? Priyanka, you were mentioning yesterday. What are the stages of this yoga ladder?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yashtanga yoga Prabhu.
Yoga ladder, samadhi up to samadhi.
The yam first. This is yam.
Yes, then
Yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar, dhyan, dharana, then samadhi.
yes. That means one who has crossed all this. So how to be able to do that? How to be able to keep the mind always concentrated or focused on Kṛṣṇa? Is always to be engaged in his devotional service. Simple. Just by trying to keep the mind empty, is it possible to think of Kṛṣṇa? Never possible. In order to concentrate the mind, one always remains in seclusion and avoid disturbance by external objects. So this is asat-samtya. So if we are able to give up this asat-sang, then the mind can concentrate on Krishna. He should be very careful to accept favorable and reject unfavorable conditions that affect his realization. And in perfect determination, he should not hanker after unnecessary material things that entangle him by the feeling of possessiveness. It is nirāśīḥ, aparigrahaḥ. We have also so many times discussed, Prabhupada gives a very, very inspirational purport in the 10th chapter. Normally, what is the mind concentrating on? The mind is concentrating how he can enjoy. And what is the means to enjoy? Is money, wealth, assets, resources. So Prabhupada says that the mind should be trained in such a way that it is free from unnecessary thoughts. And what is the unnecessary thought? One should not spend one's time pondering over earning money. That is the misuse of thinking power. The power of thought should be developed in association with persons who are authorities in scriptures, saintly person and spiritual master, and those whose thinking is highly developed. So, two things Prabhupada is saying, that he should be careful to accept favorable and reject unfavorable conditions. And in perfect determination, he should not hanker after unnecessary material things that entangle him by the feelings of possessiveness. All these perfections and precautions are perfectly executed when one is directly in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Because direct Kṛṣṇa consciousness means self-abnegation. Whereas there is little chance for material possessiveness. Self-abnegation means that one gives up denial. Denial of what? Which is unnecessary. Here, Rupa Goswami characterizes Kṛṣṇa consciousness in this way. This is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anasaktasya vishayan yataham upayunjata nirbandha Kṛṣṇa sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate prapanchakitaya buddhaya hari sambandhi vastuna mumukshuvi parityago vairagyam falgu kathyate. So anasaktasya vishayan. First thing is that one should become asakt means attached. Anasakta means one who is completely detached. So detached from whom? From Vishya, from the sense objects. One has to become detached from the sense object. How it is possible? Yataharam upayunjata. When he sees everything in connection or relation with Kṛṣṇa. How that is possible? When the mind is constantly focused on Kṛṣṇa. So when one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Kṛṣṇa, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. On the other hand, when one rejects everything, without knowledge of its relationship to Kṛṣṇa, is not as complete in his renunciation. So, his vairagyam means renunciation. It is falgu. Falgu means it is pretentious. When the renunciation is falgu, when one is not situated in knowledge. What is the knowledge? That everything belongs to Kṛṣṇa. So what can one own or what can one disown? So what one has to give up? One has to give up this false feeling of being the proprietor, enjoyer, or possessor. So as one does that, one can come to this stage. One can come to the stage of yoga practice. A Kṛṣṇa conscious person knows well, a Kṛṣṇa conscious person well knows that everything belongs to Krishna, and thus he is always free from feeling of personal possession. As such, he has no hankering for anything on his own personal account. Why? Because we will see in the further verses, he even knows that even this body belongs to Krishna. So how can I have anything separate from Krishna? He knows how to accept things in favor of Krishna consciousness and how to reject things unfavorably to Krishna consciousness. We see in the life of our Acharya, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he talked about Yukta Vairagya. Yukta Vairagya means that renunciation in connection with Krishna. So everything that we have or we possess should be utilized in serving Krishna, not for our personal self gratification or our personal advantage. Prabhupada is saying that he is always aloof from material things because he is always transcendental and he is always alone, having nothing to do with persons not in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness is a perfect yogi. And what is the process? How to practice it? What are the stages or what are the limbs to practice this position? So that is mentioned in the next two verses. Suchau deshe pratisthapya sthiram āsanam ātmānam nāti ucciritam nāti nīcam chailajina kushottaram tatrekagram manakritva yata-citta-indriya kriya upavishya asane yuñjīta yogamatma vishuddhaye. So what is the practice? How to come to this stage of controlling the mind? So what are the yama and niyama and asana? So it is explained here. So the first item here it is being mentioned is Suchau desha pratisthapya. So where one has to begin this yoga practice? Not in any place where I feel comfortable, not going to any open park or not sitting in your own air-conditioned room. It will not happen. So where it has to be? It has to be in Suchau deshe. Suchau deshe means it has to be in a sanctified place. That means that is spiritually surcharged or potent place. What is spiritually surcharged or potent place? That is the place where the Supreme Lord's connection can be made. It is Suchau deshe pratisthapya. And one has to be sthiram. What posture one has to be? He has to be fixed. If he is in Padma-asana, he has to remain fixed in the Padma-asana. Sthiram asanam ātmānam. And that asana, what should be the posture of the asana? Na ati ucca, it should not be very high. Na ati nicham, it should not be very low. One should not sit on the grass or on the ground. Or one should not sit on a very high elevated place. So these are these processes or the positions that one has to maintain. I'll quickly go through. To practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place, not just a secluded place, that has to be a sanctified place. The Prabhupada says, Suchau desha is a sanctified place. What are the sanctified places? May I ask? What are the sanctified places? Which place is qualified as sanctified place and which place does not qualify as sanctified place. Yes, Sonika?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, the places where Nam Sankirtan is going on, that is sanctified. Where Pandavas has visited, that is sanctified. And where Ganga flows, the banks are sanctified. The places at the banks are sanctified.
Yes, but here in this context, what it means that those places where there can be connection made to the Supreme Lord. The dhams, whether it is Vrindavan or whether it is Dwarka or Puri, such places. It has to be sanctified. Where did Dhruv Maharaj come to perform his yoga or dhyana yoga? In one of the forests of Vrindavan, Madhuvan. It was in Madhuvan. The sanctified place means where there is the connection with the Supreme Lord. And should lay kushagrash on the ground. This is another condition. It should be a secluded place and you should lay kushagrash on the ground and then cover it with deer skin. Why cover it with deer skin? Lay kushagrash on the ground and then cover it with deer skin, because the yogis in the previous eras, they were meditating for long periods, hundreds and thousands of years. So what happens is on the ground, many times, many reptiles and snakes come. But if they are seated on the deer skin, so those reptiles or snake will not come and disturb the practitioner. And a soft cloth. As we discussed, the sheet should be neither too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. That is Sucha. The yogi then should on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses and activities and fixing the mind on one point. So this is the recommended process. Prabhupada says, sacred place refers to the place of pilgrimage in India. The yogis, the transcendentalist or the devotees all leave home and reside in sacred places such as Prayag, Mathura, Vrindavan, Rishikesh and Haridwar. And in solitude practice yoga, where the sacred rivers like Yamuna and the Ganges flow. Your point is coming. But often this is not possible, especially for the Westerners. Those who are not in India, what is their possibility? The so-called yoga societies in big cities may be successful in earning material benefit, but they are not at all suitable for actual practice of yoga. So what is the material benefit of this so-called yoga societies in big city? That the body may become more strong, or the body may become more fit. But it is not yoga. One is remaining on the bodily platform or on the material platform. That connection with the Supreme, it will never happen. So all these societies which are teaching yoga, it has nothing to do with the yoga which is mentioned here in Bhagavad Gita. They are not at all suitable for actual practice of yoga. One who is not self-controlled and whose mind is not undisturbed cannot practice meditation. So this is the first level. That the mind should be completely under control. Therefore, in the Brand Naradiya Puran, it is said that in the Kali Yuga, the present age of yoga, in the present yoga or age, when people in general are short-lived, slow in spiritual realization, and always disturbed by various anxieties, the best means of spiritual realization is chanting the holy names of the Lord. We saw that one has to be ekākī yata-cittātmā. He has to be completely secluded from all unwanted association and also from all unwanted desires. So how to be able to do that? So Prabhupada is saying that it is the best means is by chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nameva Kevalam, Kalau Nasteva Nasteva, Nasteva Gatiranyatha. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. So one cannot be in the seclusion, one cannot be aloof from his family members or his relatives or his friends or those who are living in the vicinity where he dwells. So what he can do? He can remain where he is and still he can perform yoga. And what is that yoga? Is the chanting of the holy name. And how he has to focus? We saw that this was the asana posture. What he has to do is, what were the niyam and what was the asanas. So now the detail is there. How he has to perform his asana. Samam kaya shiro divam dharyan achalam sthira sampreksha nasikagrama swam vishashchanavalokayan prashantātmā vigatbhir brahmachari vrate sthita manasayam macitto yata-cittātmā. So what he has to do is samam kaya shiro grivam. So the asana has been prepared. It is on the ground. What he has done, he has spread some kusha grass, and on top of the kusha grass he has a soft cloth, and on top of that soft cloth he has the deer skin, and he sits sthiram. He sits very straight, fixed position. And where is his thought? His thought or his focus is samam kaya shiro grivam. What is the posture? One should hold one's body, neck and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily on the tip of the nose. So he has to focus here. Half closed eyes. He has to focus on the tip of his nose. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life. This is prashantātmā vigatbhi brahmachari vrate sthita. So this yoga practice requires all this qualification. One who is able to clear all this, who is completely free, devoid of fear, subdued mind, completely free from sex life. One should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. Very beautiful. Prabhupada is saying, yukta-asīt matparaha. Yukta again means one who is in connection. And matpara means who makes me as his goal, the ultimate goal. The goal of life is to know Kṛṣṇa, who is situated within the heart of every living being as Paramatma, the 400 Vishnu form. The yoga process is practiced in order to discover and see this localized form of Vishnu and not for any other purpose. So this is actually the pure purpose of yoga. What is the pure purpose of yoga? Is to realize or visualize the presence of Lord Vishnu within one's heart. And Prabhupada clearly says, This yoga, the yoga process is practiced in order to discover and see this localized form of Vishnu and not for any other purposes. The localized Vishnu Murti is the plenary representation of Kṛṣṇa dwelling within one heart. One who has no program to realize this Vishnu Murti is uselessly engaged in mock yoga practice and is certainly wasting his time. So today what we see? There is abundance of this mock yoga practice. Everyone is doing only mocking yoga. We have so-called World Yoga Day. It should be called World Mocking Day. Because no one who is performing that so-called yoga is attempting to realize Vishnu, who is present in the heart. And Prabhupada is saying that he is wasting his time uselessly. One who has no program to realize this Vishnu Murti is uselessly engaged in mock yoga practice. Sorry. And is certainly wasting his time. Kṛṣṇa is the ultimate goal of life, and the Vishnu Murti situated in one's heart is the object of yoga practice. This is the Dhyan Yoga. To realize this Vishnu Murti within the heart, one has to observe complete abstinence from sex life. This is called the Niyama. First is the Yama and the other is the Niyama. This is the Niyams. Therefore, one has to leave home and live alone in a secluded place, remaining seated as mentioned above. One cannot enjoy sex life daily at home or elsewhere and attend to so-called yoga class and thus become a yogi. So Prabhupada is exposing the so-called yogis or the yoga societies to what they are doing. One has to practice controlling the mind and avoiding all kinds of self-gratification, of which sex life is the chief. In the rules of celibacy written by the great sage Yajnavalkya, it is said. So what is actually the definition of a brahmachari? It is mentioned here. Because it was mentioned here, brahmachari vrate sthitaḥ. How one has to practice this yoga? It has to be brahmachari vrate sthitaḥ. So who can be called a brahmachari? Who is karmana manasa vacha sarvavasthasu sarvada sarvatra maithuna tyago brahmacharyam prachakshate. The vow of celibacy is meant to help one completely abstain from self-indulgence in work. Just one minute. I'll close it. Brahmachari means Brahma iti acharata. One whose acharan is always keeping him in the platform of Brahman. That is on the transcendental platform. So how is that possible? Is that vow of brahmachari is meant to help one completely abstain from sex indulgence in work, in words and mind. So neither thinking, nor feeling, nor willing, nor acting. At all times, under all circumstances. Sarva avasthasu, sarvada, in all places. No one can perform correct yoga practice through self-indulgence. Brahmacharya is taught therefore from childhood when one has no knowledge of sex life. Children at the age of 5 are sent to the Gurukul or the place of the spiritual master, and the master trains the young boys in the strict discipline of becoming brahmacharis. Without such practice, no one can make advancement in any yoga. Prabhupada is saying, without such practice, no one can make advancement in any yoga, whether it be dhyan, gyan, or bhakti. One who, however, follows the rules and regulations of married life, having a sexual relationship only with his wife, and also under regulation, is called a brahmachari. This is very revolutionary. such a householder brahmachari, householder brahmachari, they require complete abstinence without compromise. In the bhakti school, a householder brahmachari is allowed controlled sex life. Because the cult of bhakti yoga is so powerful that one automatically loses sexual attraction being engaged in the superior service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 2.59, it is said, Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina raso varjam raso piyasya param drishtva nivartate. Whereas others are forced to restrain themselves from sense gratification, a devotee of the Lord automatically refrains because of superior taste. So one who has developed the taste for Kṛṣṇa consciousness, it is easy for him to develop distaste from material sense pleasure or sex pleasure. So he automatically refrains because of superior taste. Other than the devotee, no one has any information of that superior taste. Vigat bhi, one cannot be fearless unless one is fully in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. A conditioned soul is fearless due to his perverted memory, his forgetfulness of his eternal relationship with Kṛṣṇa. So fear is there because we do not have Kṛṣṇa in our heart or Kṛṣṇa in our mind, or we never think of Kṛṣṇa. To the extent one thinks of Kṛṣṇa, one is Kṛṣṇa conscious, to that extent he will be free from fear. In Bhagavatam 11:37 says, Bhayam dutiya vivineshasya syat ishat apetasya viprayo asmriti. Kṛṣṇa consciousness is the only basis for fearlessness. Therefore, perfect practice is possible for a person who is Kṛṣṇa conscious. And since the ultimate goal of yoga practice is to see the Lord within, this is the purpose of yoga practice. A Kṛṣṇa conscious person is already the best of all yogis. The principles of the yoga system mentioned herein are different from those of the popular so-called yoga societies. So no yoga society is going to talk about these principles. Not possible. So I'll stop here. So we discussed that how the progression is made, what is to be practiced, what are the regulations, what one has to concentrate and focus, and what one has to renounce and give up. So this is the framework for this process of Dhyana Yoga, which Kṛṣṇa is teaching here in this section of Bhagavad Gita. Hare Kṛṣṇa. So if you have any question or any comment or any contribution, please ask. Yes, Manoram Prabhu.
Kṛṣṇa Prabhuji, in three types of realization, like Paramatma, Brahmajyoti, and Lord Krishna as the Supreme Person. So there one focuses Krishna as the personal form. But here in 13 and 14 Purport Prabhuji, this Paramatma also is telling us the 400 Vishnu form. So this is a one kind of personal form.
Yeah. Which verse you were mentioning?
13 and 14. Purport, second line.
Yeah. Yata-cittātmā. Yeah. So, see, when one is able to focus on the Supreme Lord, either if he is able to focus on even on the Brahma Jyoti or even in the Paramatma form. The Vishnu 400 Vishnu form is the Paramatma form. But that is the expansion of the Supreme Lord. This is what we discussed now. You see how the purport of 10th verse began. Prabhupada was talking about these three aspects. That whether one is focusing here, Krishna is realized in three different degrees as Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But those who are attached, this is the important aspect. But those who are attached to the impersonal Brahman or localized super soul are also partial. It is not rejected, but it is not perfect or complete. But there is progression. So even one is concentrating in the Vishnu form is the person. Vishnu Murti is personal form. Paramatma is the localized form. Vishnu form is the personal form. So if one is able to concentrate on the Vishnu Murti form, then he will go to the spiritual planets. So what exactly is your point?
She actually my query was that Paramatma, is it the 400 Vishnu form? Because here it is written that.
But here Krishna is saying, yata-cittātmā para. For the first time, Krishna is saying that you concentrate on me. He is saying, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. Prabhupada is saying Krishna is the ultimate goal of life and the Vishnu Murti situated in one heart is the object of yoga practice. That is the Paramatma form. Vishnu Murti situated in one's heart, it is the Paramatma form. Don't think that this is some very low level, it's very high level. Even if we sit, can we think of the Vishnu Murti in the heart? So one has to, pass all this test. It's a very high test. Prashantātmā vigat bhi brahmachari vrate sthitaḥ mana sanyamya. One whose mind is completely controlled. Then one can come to Paramatma. That is what Krishna has explained. In the 7th verse we discussed that Jit-ātmā prashantasya Paramatma samahita. You see the 7th verse? For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached. But now Krishna is giving the process, how to come to that stage. By practicing this yam niyama asana. So these are the various stages. These are the stages. Stages are being discussed here in these verses. Okay.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Very few participants. Where are you, Dayashil? Dayashil Prabhu? Not reached? Okay, I'll stop here. And we will continue the next week. Hare Krishna. Śrīmad Bhagavad Gītā ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai.